going to introduce our first speaker. It's Richard. Richard is a seasoned person in the space. He's the founder of AltcoinTrader. I think many of us in the industry know him very, very well. It was set up in 2014 really to bring crypto to the South African investor community. So please welcome Richard as our first speaker for the morning.
Thanks very much, Donna. I'm absolutely fascinated by alternative financial systems. That's the type of thing that gets me up in the morning. And whenever I'm in front of a crowd like this, one of the things that I really am very inquisitive about is how many people actually own crypto. Now, I know this is a blockchain conference, so that should be an obvious answer. But very quickly, just to satisfy my curiosity, I'm going to ask everyone who has owned or currently owns crypto to quickly raise their hand. Okay. Now, I've done that many times, and it's quite clear from the response that adoption is just growing and growing. So we stand on the precipice of a financial revolution that very few people understand. Guys, for those of you that don't know, and I think Sonia made it quite obvious, I'm Richard Sousa from AltcoinTrader. How many people actually know AltcoinTrader or have invested in AltcoinTrader? Thanks, guys. So decentralized finance, or DeFi as we know it, has the potential to change the financial landscape, but we need to start adopting it. So what I want to do this morning is I actually want to inspire people that are in the space to start using decentralized finance. I'm going to share one or two of my personal experiences with decentralized finance, the journey that I've taken, and how I have actually found decentralized finance to be amazing and very uncomplicated. So we're going to start with decentralized loans. And I'm going to share a very specific experience that I had with this. Now, there is a raging debate whether decentralized finance is actually decentralized or if it's controlled. I actually want to steer away from that this morning because what I can tell you from personal experience is that DeFi works, okay, and we can maybe classify it as an alternative to the traditional restrictive banking and financial systems. So I found a really good property that I wanted to purchase. Now, we're not talking about anything fancy. A 650,000 rand two-bedroom apartment in Radio Corp. So I phoned my banker, and he said, Richard, of course, we can try. We can get you the finance. Now, I have got quite a substantial amount of finance with the bank, so I'm always hesitant to, whether they will give me more. So I went through the normal run-of-the-mill. I filled out what I considered a ridiculous amount of documentation. I submitted my ID 3 to 4 times. I submitted proof of residence, proof of earnings, and the list just continued and continued. After all of this and a 2-week delay, they came back and said, sorry, although we consider affordability all right, you are overexposed, and because of the National Credit Act, we cannot, as bankers, extend any finance to you. Now, I want to just take a moment to express not only my frustration, but what this means. This means that a traditional banking financial system can stop you from investing. They can stop you from putting food on the table for your family and for yourself. They can just put a grinding halt to your personal ability to trade. Now, having said that, I do understand that the bank has the ability and they have the right to decide who they would extend credit to. But with decentralized finance, we no longer are restricted to what the banks dictate. So it is a collateralized loan. I want to make that clear. So obviously you have to have collateral. But by default, even buying the property, I have the collateral of the property. Anyway, let's get into what I did. I took some Ethereum. I went on to, it used to be MakerDAO. It's now rebranded to oasis.app. I'd like to encourage everyone to just make a note of that site because it's going to be sort of the main theme of the talk. I put in enough Ethereum to get DAI. Now, DAI is a stable coin which is softly pegged to the US dollar. After getting enough DAI to make my purchase, I went on to, of course, AltcoinTrader and I swapped it first. There is a step in between. I went on to KyberSwap, which is a decentralized exchange, and I switched the DAI out for Ethereum. I then took this Ethereum onto AltcoinTrader, sold it, and took out the Rand value. Now, once I had the Rand value, I was able to approach the conveyancing attorneys and pay the full amount of the bond, what would have been the bond. So let's see where I am now. I have the property, I have the title deed, and I have a decentralized finance loan on Oasis. Just to give you an idea of how flexible this is, I can choose to pay it whenever I like. There is an 8% annual interest. Now, here's where a couple of things absolutely blow my mind. I don't have to ever pay that loan. If Ethereum price drops really low, I can abandon it, and I still own the property. No traditional finance. So worst case scenario, whatever goes bad from here, I have the title deed, and I am the owner to that property. So if I do decide to hold my position with Ethereum and Ethereum starts to go up in price, I can sell my Ethereum, and by making this move, delaying the sale of crypto to simply purchase an asset, by financing it this way, as the price of Ethereum goes up, that property could end up costing me a half or whatever the increase is in the cryptocurrency. I hope you guys are all following this with me. So when I went to get my decentralized finance loan, it took me 10 minutes, and that's just because I'm a slow reader. There was no ID required. There was no email required. There was absolutely no personal identification required for me to mint the DAI stablecoin. So we have the ability to now use our collateral and purchase real-world assets. And I want to emphasize something. It is really, really simple. You know, in previous years, guys spoke about smart contracts, and you had to have a reasonable amount of knowledge on how to work with Ethereum with smart contracts. Guys, I'm talking about clicking 2 or 3 buttons. And it is, if you can send an email, or you can use online banking, this is not a challenge for you. So maybe if I can just say to everyone in this auditorium today, try it. And I'm not saying on a big scale. Let's start testing. Take a $100 loan, take a $200 loan, and just walk through the process. You will be absolutely blown away. So this starts to open a whole lot of financial avenues. I've always been the guy that I have a stake in crypto, and when the price drops tremendously and I want to buy, I don't have any money. This problem is now solved because you can take a loan if you are really convinced that the price is going to go up. Now, I don't suggest this because obviously leveraging in this way can be risky. But I'm not going to say I'm not your financial advisor. I'm here to give you good ideas. Whatever you do with them, that's totally up to you. But you have the possibility to take a loan and to buy crypto at the reduced rate. As that crypto increases in price, you could simply repay that loan. If you don't repay that loan, think about this. You will never get a bad credit rating. You will never be penalized. In fact, no one will ever know. The only incentive you have to ever repay this loan is you want your collateral back. So if the collateral is no longer of value to you, walk away, keep your property. The next thing, DeFi savings. Now, once again, on that same site, I did a little bit of a test, and I put 1,000 DAI into a savings account. And what I really thought was quite novel is you see your interest building up per second. So it's 8% per annum, which is fairly decent. and it builds up. Now, I just get such a kick out of taking my phone and seeing those numbers spin and knowing that I'm earning interest. But it's actually a lot greater than that. If you start to use this as a parallel saving instrument, it can become very, very powerful. The lottery, where you cannot lose. Now, let me tell you guys another story. When the lottery first came out in South Africa, I grabbed my calculator and I started to try and calculate my odds of winning. And when I realized that the calculator didn't have enough noughts to calculate the odds, I said, guys, I'm like a reasonable person. I am personally never in my life going to take a lottery ticket because it just doesn't make sense. My dad, on the other hand, has often criticized me for this, saying, son, if you don't have a ticket, you do not have a chance. But be that as it may, I like to work with maths and logic, and I believe that the chance is so small that my time on earth is not going to work with me winning a lottery ticket. But the reason that I'm bringing this up is because I just want to throw out some of the ideas that is happening in DeFi. So the lottery where you cannot lose works like this. A lottery ticket is $1. You pay, once again, in DAI. The site is called Pool Together. Everyone puts in money, and the winner gets the interest generated for that month. So they have a monthly lottery draw. Your capital, or the $1 tickets that you have put in to help the pool grow the interest, at any stage can be withdrawn. Obviously, it would be a very bad decision to withdraw it on the day before they announce the winner. But it's just something to consider, and there are 1,000 ideas out there that decentralized finance is going to start bringing to light and addressing. Another thing which I've recently explored, for all of those of you who wanted to own an exchange or wanted to own a stake in exchange, we've got companies like Uniswap. Uniswap, if you have a MetaMask wallet, which is a crypto wallet, it's a download for the Chrome browser. You can go on there and you can swap Ethereum for any of the ERC20 tokens. And you do that without any password, without any username, without any identification, because it's just a simple way to swap assets and to move in and out. And if you look into this a little bit deeper, you have the ability to provide the exchange with liquidity. In other words, you might give them X amount of Ethereum and X amount of Maker coin, and you will then proportion it to the rest of the people that have provided liquidity for Uniswap on that specific trading pair. So if your input is, let's say, 0.5%, you will get 0.5% of the trades that happen on that trading pair, which is something to consider. And at this stage, it's very new to me. I'm still exploring the exact dynamics with it, but I have got a test investment in there, and I will be seeing how that works and how those fees are distributed, because it's quite involved. But once again, it really is an amazing evolution and shows the ways that DeFi and alternatives are coming to light every day. So people at the earlier conferences, very few people started having crypto, and it was all muddy. So I'd like to suggest now, if you have crypto, that's sort of adoption 1.0. If you start working with decentralized finance and start meddling and taking small loans and getting involved, we could say that's adoption 2.0. And I think if we are going to try and drive this industry forward, we need to all play a small role and maybe start working with these things. It is not technical. Those days are over. It is simple. If you can read and click a button, you can get involved. The current monetary system is a system of debt. And in a system of debt, one person is a slave, or one party is a slave. So we all know that they say modern day slaves are not in chains, they are in debt. Now, crypto and that loan that I've just explained to you is not a system of debt, based on the fact that I can walk away without being in debt. Because I've collateralized that loan, it's not a system of debt. You have to build yourself and you have to have merit before you can exercise the decentralized loans that are out there. So it changes the whole way and the whole dark side of the debt cycle, at least in my mind anyway. Now, obviously, with decentralized finance and all of these things that we are getting involved in, there's no backstop. There's no regulator or there's no protection if you as an individual make a mistake. And that is very important because current regulators will always say, but how do we protect the consumer? So guys, I would like to suggest responsibility is the price of freedom. And it goes back to, if you lose your bank password, you can phone them and you can get it extracted. If you lose your Bitcoin password or your private keys, you need to get to the point where you can take responsibility. This is not for someone who's sitting back wanting to be protected by the government. This is for someone that can take their own destiny into their hands, go, okay, I am now in control of my fate. I accept responsibility for this. And that is how we will, as a species, enter into this new freedom of this financial sector. So there's a story that I like to tell. I dropped my kids off at school, and I've got a 10-year-old. And the one morning, I forgot to pack him lunch. And I said to him, okay, here's 100 Rand, because that's all I had on me. Don't let the other kids see this money. Make sure you put it in your pocket. Don't lose it. Make sure you get the right change. And he turned around to me and said, Dad, I can look after my own money. I said, okay. And now, is that not indicative of us as a society? At what stage are we going to turn around and say, we can look after our own money? In conclusion, guys, if you thought I was not going to do this, of course I'm going to. I do have a YouTube channel where we go into depth with how to take loans and how to actually do the practical thing. I mean, it's very easy to discuss the theory and say, go take a loan, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes you just need a tutorial video or you need someone to take you by the hand and actually say, okay, here's where you go, here's the pitfalls, here's a couple of things to look out for. So for those of you that are interested, it's RADS Act. I'm taking a free cheap shot to get some subscribers, but who wouldn't? They got hold of me at last minute, so we'll see if that happens again. So guys, if you do want to look into this in a little bit more detail, follow me on YouTube. I put out content on a weekly basis. And I'm going to leave it at that. I want it to be short, punchy, and just get this message across in a clear way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. I think we've got 1 or 2 minutes for questions. Does anyone have a question for Richard?
Morning, Richard.
Good morning.
My name is Karabo. I am an investor in your platform.
Thanks very much.
My question is with the recent move by local banks to step away from the on-ramps into your platforms. Do you see it really as a regulatory question, or is it a question of they're seeing the volumes of rand moving into exchanges, and in turn you almost becoming like a bank?
It's a very good question. Thanks, Karaba. Very, very interesting one. So I think it's probably a little bit premature to say banks are exiting the crypto space. We know that FNB has, and Absa's never really entered, so they're pretty much out. But we still have strong banking partnerships with Standard Bank. So at this stage, we also have Nedbank on our platform, and they have indicated to us that they are waiting to see what the regulators bring up. But I want to just expand a little bit on your question, because we've seen in the media recently international banks, specifically in India, saying that they want to overturn the recent decision to make crypto legal because it can affect the banking, which is really quite a weird thing to say, because they're basically coming out openly and saying we don't want competition. But I don't think at this stage in South Africa we've reached that point. I hope that answers your question.
Hi there. Just want to ask a question. You were talking about your collateralized loan. So does Oasis then hold that collateral, and they can call that collateral at any point? Or how, I mean, it seems a little bit. I mean, what you were talking about there, guys just walk away. You can just walk away at any point. Then who ends up owning the property? Is it Oasis?
Okay, so that's a very important point, and it's extremely important that this is made clear. Remember, I've got the title deed. I have paid the attorneys for the property. So I own the property. At no point can that change. Oasis, or that smart contract, and I'll tell you about the collateral in a second, have no idea what I've done with that money. For all intents and purposes, I could have spent it on an overseas trip or done anything. There is no connection between me owning the property, holding the title deed, and my collateral-based loan. So when I walk away, remember it would be to their advantage because the smart contract holds all my collateral. One of the things I might have neglected to say is that you can get 66% of your collateral paid out in DAI. So you are heavily invested in the smart contract. It is unlikely that anything would ever happen to that smart contract. However, there is a need to assess the risk because that smart contract, if it were hacked, okay, which hasn't happened to this point, and there are hundreds of millions of rands invested in those type of contracts. But if it were hacked, once again, we're going back to the responsibility of your own funds. That's something that you would need to consider before actually going in head first. But the system has been built over a significant period of time, and I personally feel confident in it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be jumping in. But hence, going back to why I said, guys, start testing. Once you get a feel for how it works, once you understand where the collateral is, how the collateral is managed, how you can pay it back, how you can draw your collateral out at any stage if you start paying back. If the price of Ethereum goes up, you can extract your Ethereum, putting you at less risk. So today was very much glossing over the topic. There are a couple of fundamentals, and hence why I said we can go into in greater depth through tutorial videos and so on. Did that answer the question? You don't seem sure.
Yeah, I think it's, as you said, it's a little bit more investigation.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Richard, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.